Alright everyone, hello. Today we are actually going to get a little bit into not so much witchcraft, but more herbalism, which I will say right off the bat, please do not ever use herbal medicine if you are not extremely sure of what you're doing. Do not use it in place of your doctor's orders. Do not use herbal medicine as some kind of super cure-all, especially if you are inexperienced with using it. But with that big old disclaimer out of the way, today we're going to talk about tinctures, which are really cool and really useful if you are someone who is into natural medicine. So, at its most basic, the way I can explain a tincture to you is basically just if you take alcohol, stuff something into it, the alcohol leaches out the properties of that thing you put in it, and the liquid left behind, that is the tincture. If I show you this here, this was, originally we tried to make like a blueberry schnapps, but honestly, at this point, you could probably consider this more of a blueberry tincture, because the alcohol we used in it was just way too strong for it. We used Everclear for this, which is very high proof grain alcohol. We probably should have just used regular vodka, so nonetheless, this, as you can see how dark the color is, that's because the alcohol pulled a lot of that blueberry juice out and into this. There are still real blueberries in here too, but this was pure, clear liquid, and over time it became this pitch black, purpley liquid, right? So this, I mean, it's alcohol, and it tastes like rubbing alcohol, but blueberry edition. But you bet your butt that has a lot of the good properties of blueberries in here, and if you wanted to use it as a tincture, you could. If you wanted to be crazy and mix it into a drink, you could. Actually, we do make some pretty tasty cocktails with this somehow. But this is an example of just a schnapps gone wrong. Real tinctures are a little bit different. I think another example of a much less potent but still useful tincture is definitely Jägermeister. Ironically. So Jägermeister, like in my house, you see it's all cold and frosty. That's because I don't really drink this as an alcohol. Like, I don't drink this in drinks or mix it into things. What I do is, if my stomach is upset because I ate something very heavy or something that is just turning around like a tumble dry cycle in my stomach, I will take a shot of Jägermeister, because Jägermeister, as it says, selected 56 botanicals. It's literally just herbs steeped in alcohol, that the alcohol then pulls all of that goodness out into it, and when you take a shot of it, those herbs act as a carminative. It helps with your digestion, and that helps kind of settle down your stomach. There's another version of this that my parents use called Unterberg. Unterberg is these little tiny bottles that are essentially the same thing. They taste horrible, they smell terrible, but those are like a more hardcore version of Jaeger. Jaeger I like because at least it doesn't smell bad, it doesn't taste the worst. But it's definitely strong. It's very licorice flavor. Obviously, though, tinctures are not meant to be drinking in cocktails like that. That's why I said this is the closest I have, but that does not mean that Jaeger or that blueberry concoction are actually tinctures. You do not want to take an entire shot of a tincture. That will be very bad. So let me be explicitly clear. These are not tinctures. They're just the closest example I have to tinctures. If you took an entire shot of pure tincture, you could seriously damage yourself. Do not do that. When it comes to a tincture, usually it's something that is using, herbs like, say, chamomile, lavender, valerian, nettle, ginger, turmeric, or anything else, and, extracting all of those benefits out of them with the alcohol. And then that alcohol becomes the thing that you take either internally or, however. Usually you drink it or put it under your tongue, or you mix it into a smoothie or something. But just like essential oil is the extreme hyper-powered version of an herb, so too are tinctures. So too are tinctures, very potent versions of an herb, and that's because they extract so much out through that alcohol that you put it in, that you really only need a few drops to get the effects. And so the cool thing about tinctures is that they actually have a pretty, infinite shelf life. They have a pretty infinite shelf life, which means that you make them, and then they just stay good, because alcohol doesn't really go bad. Alcohol kills pretty much everything, so you don't ever have to really worry about that. You just have to make sure you store it properly, which is usually a cool, dark place. But otherwise, they're very easy to make, and they're even easier to store. And whenever you need a boost for whatever it is you need a boost for, whenever you need a little bit of help with, say, digestion, say, anxiety, or whatever else, tinctures can absolutely help. And there are plenty of, like, botanical companies that make their own tincture, right? Like, there are plenty that you can go online and look for tinctures, and they will sell them to you. However, if you wanted to make them yourself, generally the appropriate wisdom is you have a 1-to-1 ratio of fresh plants to alcohol. And if you have dried herbs, because you can make tinctures with dried herbs, then the appropriate ratio is 1-to-4 dried plants to alcohol. And the alcohol should be pretty high proof. Like, I'd say vodka is like the minimum proof. Like, usually you want 100 proof to 180 proof. And the higher the proof is for things that are not as water soluble. So if you're using an herb or something that has, antioxidants or some kind of benefits to it, some kind of chemicals or properties to them that are water soluble, you can use a lower proof. But if you're doing something that isn't water soluble, you're going to need a higher proof because that'll pull out the stuff a lot easier. And so with these tinctures, what you want to do again is you want to mix those in that appropriate ratio, and then you want to put it in a dark place, and every day for 3 weeks, shake it around a little bit. Kind of turn it. With that blueberry thing I showed you, that was something we had to do. We kind of have to, have it upside. The next day you turn it over, and the next day you turn it over again for a certain amount of weeks, and then you just let it sit. And with things like alcohol, you intend to be like a drink. The longer you let them sit, the more palatable they'll be. So that actually blueberry has been sitting there for a good, probably 2 years now. It's still sharp, okay? It's still sharp. It's still, but it got better with time. Generally, with tinctures, you only need about maybe maximum, and I mean maximum, like 20 drops. Like, think of like a little eyedropper in like one of like a little glass bottle. You squeeze it, bang, that is a serving. You do not need more than that. And what you can do is either put them in your mouth under your tongue and leave it there for a minute and then swallow, or you can mix those few drops in with a smoothie. You could mix it into a shot of water and just drink the whole shot, so dilute it a bit. You can do all that stuff. And the thing about tinctures is because they are alcohol based, because they've leached all those nutrients and all of those good things into the alcohol, they're best taken on an empty stomach, because then they will basically hit your bloodstream immediately and you'll get those effects very quickly. So instead of like eating something with ginger in it, you could make a ginger tincture in which you just have a few drops, and whatever the benefits of ginger are, like, anti-inflammatory and other stuff like that, you'll get that very soon. Same thing with turmeric, right? And with chamomile, rather than making something with chamomile in it, rather than even having a cup of chamomile tea, if you make a tincture of chamomile, that's going to hit very quickly. So it's good maybe like for before bed, if you really wanted to, have some kind of nerve relief, some sleep aid. Having a chamomile or even a lavender tincture, a few drops under the tongue, go to bed, it'll probably be alright. And it'll probably work a lot faster than a cup of tea. And on top of that, I don't know about you all, but for me, I'll make a cup of tea, forget about it, maybe have 2 sips, now it's cold, now I threw it all out, now I'm not really getting the benefits of the tea, and I also wasted the tea. If all I had to do was put a few drops under my tongue, and then wait a minute, and then go to bed, that'd be a lot easier. A lot easier and a lot less wasted tea. That's all I'm saying. And I don't think I need to say this, but if you're doing tinctures, then it's not just about medicine, right? If you're a witch, of course, making a chamomile tincture is very good for the nerves and for sleep, but the magical qualities of chamomile, the sun, optimism, peace, joy, that can also go into it from a more magical perspective. But as always, be careful, because just because these herbs are technically safe generally for consumption doesn't mean that you wouldn't have an adverse reaction to it, doesn't mean that you might be okay taking the amount that you get in a tincture. So definitely double, triple, ultimate check with some doctor, some professional, your doctor, somebody, before you do this kind of stuff. Herbalism is no joke. I know people, are getting into natural medicine now, and that's great, but it's still medicine, right? If you wouldn't just start kind of going into a doctor's office and starting mixing, if you wouldn't go down the CVS prescription aisle and start mixing and matching all the pretty pills that look nice, don't do that with herbal medicine either. Some of these herbs, if you have them in these really potent quantities, these potent tinctures and other mixtures, they can mess with the medication you're already taking. They can screw up your own body systems. They can cause adverse reactions. They can do a lot of things. So you got to make sure that you are doing things safely and correctly, that you're not taking too much of something at once, that you are getting things from reputable sources, that your doctor has cleared you for these things. Like, I know it sounds like overkill, but really, there's a reason I really stick to herbal medicine that consists of like infused honey and like a shot of Jaeger, because if I try to make my own tinctures, which I could, and I honestly would like to start, I would still be very cautious so that I don't trigger myself into some kind of reaction or have some kind of issue, right? Herbal medicine's supposed to be medicine, it's not supposed to be poison. Remember that. But with all that said, I hope that this gives you a good, head start on what tinctures are, what they can be used for, and if you wanted to build up your own arsenal of tinctures, if you wanted to make a blend for sleep, you want to make a blend for digestion, you can absolutely do that. And by all means, you should check out what kind of herbs and spices you can use to do that, which ones are safe to do so that you can maybe, instead of having to go to the doctor for every little sniffle, maybe you can build your own stock of things to do, right? I don't go to the doctor for every sniffle. Oftentimes, if I have some kind of throat cold, I'll just have a cup of ginger cinnamon tea with honey in it, infused honey, and there you go. So, again, be safe, check with your doctor, don't replace real medicine with it, but obviously if you're going to the doctor for a cough, that's not really something you need to go to the doctor for in the beginning with, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor though, so don't take my word for that. With all that said, I really do hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you for more talk about that thing I mentioned a few times in here, infused honey. See ya.